was supposed to be an ordinary overnight journey, a flight so routine it barely earned a second thought. On May 31, 2009, Air France Flight 4447 took off from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, bound for Paris, France. On board were 228 souls: pilots, flight attendants, business travelers, honeymooners, families, each carrying dreams, plans, lives full of promise. The aircraft, an advanced Airbus A330, was considered one of the safest planes in the sky. The weather forecast spoke of some turbulence, but nothing that should have troubled a modern jetliner. As night fell over the vast Atlantic Ocean, the passengers settled in, unaware that they were flying toward disaster. In just a few hours, Flight 447 would vanish without a trace, sparking one of the greatest aviation mysteries of the modern era.
At 1:35 a.m., Flight 447 sent its final radio message. Checking in with Brazilian air traffic control, the flight seemed normal, no alarms, no distress calls. Then, when Flight 447 failed to report in with Senegalese air traffic control hours later, panic spread behind the scenes. Controllers tried in vain to raise the aircraft. There were no signals, no emergency beacons. It had simply disappeared into the darkness, as if swallowed by the Atlantic itself.
Search planes and ships were dispatched immediately, combing the vast ocean for any sign of wreckage. For days, they found nothing but empty sea and sky. Families waited in agony for news. Governments mobilized. Speculation ran wild. Was it a catastrophic failure, a terror attack, a freak act of nature? 5 days later, a grim discovery. Floating debris, life jackets, and bodies scattered across the surface of the ocean. The hope of survivors faded. But the biggest questions remained unanswered. The flight data recorders, the black boxes, were still missing somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic. Without them, the truth was buried with the plane.
Years later, after relentless deep-sea searches costing millions, the black boxes were finally recovered from the ocean floor, nearly 4 kilometers deep. Their recordings revealed a chilling story of confusion and tragedy. Flight 447 had flown into a zone of severe turbulence known as the Intertropical Convergence Zone, a region notorious for violent storms. In the chaos, the plane's pitot tubes, small devices that measure airspeed, became blocked by ice crystals. Suddenly, the autopilot disengaged, and alarms sounded, the cockpit filled with confusion. The pilots misread the situation. Instead of stabilizing the aircraft, they pulled the nose up, sending the plane into an aerodynamic stall. For nearly 4 minutes, the plane fell through the darkness, engines running, alarms blaring, as the crew struggled to understand what was happening. At 2:14 a.m., Flight 447 struck the Atlantic Ocean at terrifying speed, breaking apart instantly. Everyone on board was killed. The pilots never realized they were in a stall. They were flying blind, in the dead of night, with contradictory information trapped in a perfect storm of technological failure and human error.
The tragedy of Air France 447 shook the aviation world to its core. It exposed dangerous gaps in pilot training, especially in handling high-altitude emergencies without relying on automation. It revealed the vulnerability of even the most sophisticated machines, and the fragile thread of human judgment on which every flight depends. In response, airlines around the world rewrote training manuals. Pilots were retrained to recognize and recover from aerodynamic stalls without panic. But for the families of the 228 victims, the reforms came too late. Their loved ones were lost, their final moments unfolding in fear and confusion, far above the indifferent sea.
Even now, the story of Flight 447 haunts the skies. It reminds us that behind every takeoff and landing lies a delicate dance between man and machine, between trust and error, between routine and catastrophe. Flight 447 was not brought down by one mistake, but by a cascade, a chain reaction of small errors and silent failures in the dark. It teaches a lesson aviation and humanity can never afford to forget. In the battle against nature, overconfidence is the enemy. Vigilance is survival.